Hello everyone and welcome back to a brand new video, and welcome back once again to Automobilista 2. Yesterday we return with the final episode of our trip through history inside this game. We've made it to the 2000s. We've been obviously through the ridiculously dangerous, racing of the 1960s. We went through kind of the evolution of aerodynamics in the 1970s, the turbo era of the 1980s, and then of course last week the 1990s with kind of the sudden push for safety after the deaths of Roland Ratzenberger and Ayrton Senna. But yes, today though, we are into the 2000s, of course. V10s reign supreme. Safety had come a long way in Formula 1 as well, of course. There were still some massive crashes that drivers were luckily able to walk away from, which was really, really important. But quickly, before we get into anything else, I just want to say, if you've been watching these videos and you like what you're seeing, AMS2 currently, until tomorrow, when this video goes live, the 20th of March even, is 70% off. You can pick it up for just £10.50. Normally it's on Steam for like £35. So if you're watching this just after the video's gone live, now is the time to pick up this game. Like I said, you can get a load of the DLC as well, is on sale if you want to drive more of the Formula 1 cars as well. But yeah, today though, we're back, like I said, obviously for the 2000s. We're kind of combining the 2000s and the 2010s, because there isn't really kind of a late 2000s V8 car inside the game. We're kind of stuck with what I believe is known as the Formula Razor car that was kind of when when Automobilista 1 initially released. So this car is kind of more actually based on like the early 2010 V8 cars, but it's still fairly similar. So we're going to take this thing to Interlagos, and then we're going to take the V10s with traction control, ABS, all that good stuff over to the Hockenheim ring. Get yourself subscribed if you're new. And as well, obviously, if you want to get early access to these videos, you can click the join button down below for just £1 a month. But yeah, let's do this thing. Well, here we are then in a V8 Formula 1 car. Maybe one of the first V8s I think I've ever driven, actually, inside this series. Like I said, this car is kind of more based on the 2010 cars. So obviously 2.4 litre V8 engine in this thing. Similar to obviously what you got still at the end of the 2000s, but obviously just a little bit kind of further advanced in the technical department as well there. And I must admit, I think the V8s are often kind of forgotten for just how good they sound, especially kind of the blown exhaust cars of 2011. They sounded absolutely violent as well. There's some brilliant clips on YouTube of some of those machines going around Monza, for example, as well. But obviously, yeah, I think most people here are going to want to see kind of the V10s around the Hockenheim ring as well. And like we've kind of said with every generation in this series so far, it is very much kind of split into two halves. You kind of had the carryover of the late 90s with all kind of the safety improvements, the V10s, the groove tyres, everything like that. And then obviously the return of like the driver aids as well, that, kind of defined the early 2000s, especially, when you had, things like the old Hockenheim ring as well, still in the sport, and a couple of kind of the older style circuits as well. And then obviously kind of the safety improvements continued coming. Obviously ABS traction control was once again banned by kind of 2008. So you did kind of obviously get that switch between kind of the V10s still feel quite retro. The V8s kind of feel a bit more modern as well, and especially as well, I want to know where like the butterfly style steering wheels have gone in the sport, because I think these things are so cool as well. Obviously nowadays we've kind of gone back more to this square dash, obviously with a screen on it. I think that's mainly for obviously managing all the ERS modes that you get now in the sport. But yeah, these butterfly steering wheels, I mean, Williams was still using until not that long ago as well, let's not forget, are really, really cool. Obviously no ABS, no traction control as well, so these things, yeah, really would start punishing you. And I mean, we had to come to Interlagos, didn't we, for this one, because of course some of the greatest V8 moments came around this circuit. So many world championships getting decided around this venue. Of course, the three-way title decider of 2007, with Kimi Räikkönen snatching the World Championship away from a rookie Lewis Hamilton and Fernando Alonso. Obviously, Alonso wrapping up the world title in 2006, I believe, here as well at Interlagos. Obviously, Hamilton then his redemption in 2008 against Felipe Massa in that last corner, last lap move on Timo Glock. And obviously, who can forget Jenson Button's drive through the field as well in 2009. I do firmly believe, and I know I've said this before on videos, that the 2006 to 2010, so the first 5 years of the V8 era, is arguably the best and most underrated era ever in Formula 1. You had 5 world championships for 5 different teams in 5 years, and there really was just kind of this level, you know, there were dramatic rule changes between seasons and things like that, and kind of teams had started to work out the modern day tech that we still kind of see in the sport, but kind of sandwiched in between that, you know, Sebastian Vettel era of domination, which only really was 2011 and 2013, and obviously the Schumacher years, you know, obviously of the early 2000s as well. You know, it was really, really kind of cool, special and unique. And I think, you know, for me as well, there is an element of, you know, it was in this time that I got into Formula 1 as well. You know, I can remember kind of watching some of those Grand Prix. I can remember 2008 Silverstone. I can remember that season finale in Interlagos as well. And obviously Felipe Massa's horror crash in 2009. You know, these were kind of the moments of my childhood in the sport as well, which is really, really special. And, you know, listening to one of these things go around, yes, it might not quite be the V10, but still definitely very, very different to, you know, the modern turbo hybrid V6s. There's all these talks from Mohammed Ben Sulayem that we could get V10s back. Ultimately, I think that's a little bit of him just trying to gain support from fans again as well. But yeah, these things were really, really special. Also, a whole lot easier to drive than most of the older cars as well. Downforce is definitely proven itself to be very, very important when behind the wheel of a Formula 1 car as well then. But yeah, this thing, a very, very cool experience. I also think the pace of these cars was very well done. Now, they weren't quite as quick as the V10s before them, but kind of still allowed for interesting strategies and things like that. And also, you know, you're really trying to drag them up towards the limit as well, which is really, really cool. But what was my best lap out of interest there? 1:14.0, which I think without DRS, I can be pretty happy with as well. Let's, though, get on to the big thing. We're going to take V10s to the Hockenheim ring, as that was kind of... It really did feel like that was the last of the old generation. Well, here we are then in the Formula V10 Gen 2 car, and yeah, the V8 sounded good, but it is not quite one of these V10s. They're lights out, and away we go, and immediately the launch control will help us down in towards turn 1 there as well, trying to look around the outside in towards that first corner. Not quite able to make anything happen through there, but of course, yeah, this generation of cars, obviously the one we've been using throughout our kind of most of our F1 Ultimate career mode so far on the channel. I mean, look at that, 345 kilometers an hour as we make our way down in towards the first chicane then of this lap. We are on the 2001 layout of this venue, which of course, yeah, the last one, or kind of the last iteration here of the original Hockenheim ring as well. And of course, it wasn't long after this, I believe after 2002, I want to say, that obviously this venue was completely obviously abandoned, or most of this layout was abandoned, obviously, you know, with the alterations to the circuit as well, through this chicane. Horrible, horrible little chicane there. Obviously through the middle of the banked hairpin down the back of the circuit. Of course, still this venue almost as long as Spa-Francorchamps back in the day, only a couple of 100 meters shorter. So I wanted to make it 3 wide there temporarily, but thought better of it. I mean, look how slim cut the rear wings are as well on these things. I know everybody obviously is going to be on a low downforce setup around this venue, but, you know, when you came to this place in Monza as well, of course, I mean, they were very similar circuits back in the day of obviously just, you know, massive straights with chicanes. The only real difference, of course, was that Hockenheim kind of had this bit of a slower final sector of the lap as well. But yeah, like I said, I think, you know, the V8, that generation between 2006 and 2010 was arguably one of Formula One's best, you know, for kind of different storylines and things like that. But you can absolutely understand why this generation of cars is looked back on so fondly as well. Obviously, ABS and traction controls, you can really, lean on it as well, you know, through the corners and things like that. Apparently, you can lean on that guy in front of you as well through the first couple of corners. But big speed, you know, loud cars as well. Exactly the kind of thing you wanted to see in Formula 1 as well. And like, you know, I've said so many times, AMS2 just does such a fantastic job of kind of showcasing these machines as well. I need to do some classic career modes on this game. I know I've said it before, I'd love to kind of do like a properly in-depth series of going through various generations inside this game. I mean, there's so many season mods for it as well that you could probably run, you know, from kind of the 1960s all the way up until pretty much the modern day, I want to say. So we could definitely try and do like a longer term project with something like that at some point as well there. But yeah, this is the kind of era that was so cool. And I think, you know, there were still obviously a lot of storylines going on, you know, so many manufacturers coming in. But, you know, ultimately, you know, Michael Schumacher and Ferrari, you know, dominated the early 2000s. And that kind of just didn't allow any of those other storylines to play out. You know, kind of the last rise of Williams, if you will, which maybe 2025 we could start to see them kind of on this return journey. You know, I don't think they're going to be fighting at the front, but they certainly, yeah, Alex Albon had a great race out at Australia, obviously Albert Park last weekend. Obviously Toyota coming in, you know, throwing all this money at Formula 1 as well, and pretty much in the grand scheme of things getting nothing to show for it. A couple of pole positions and a few podiums was all they were able to get in their time in the sport. There was all that curve through the exit of turn 1 is so scary to lean on as well there. You know, McLaren, the rise and fall of that team as well. You know, the 2000s generally was a pretty good era for them, but certainly, you know, so many missed opportunities as well. You know, the brief rise of Renault in the sport, obviously with Fernando Alonso, those 2 world championships kind of in the middle of the era, or middle of the decade, sorry, I should say as well. You know, finally toppling Michael Schumacher off of his perch, and like we said, you know, those Ferrari versus McLaren battles after Ferrari, you know, kind of moved away from Michael at the end of 2006 there. As when I'm by myself, I cannot seem to quite spot my braking points around this venue as well, it would seem. But yeah, I mean, like I say, if for me the big thing is, of course, that sound. It's just so, I miss this so badly. You know, I never really kind of watched Formula 1 properly in this generation. I've completely taken everything out of the front tyres, I've just realised. We've got no front tyres left on this car. I don't know how I've taken everything out of the fronts. The rear tyres are absolutely fine, but you know, I don't actually think we've got ABS on this car, so we are just flat spotting everywhere. I think is actually where our problems are. Luckily, this venue, yeah, like I said, not too many corners, but that is horrendous. I mean, look at the flat spots on them. That's something that AMS2 as well, I think, does a really, really good job of simulating as well. That you can see on both those front tyres just how much that kind of vibrating around there, and you can feel it through the wheel as well. I apologise if it's kind of coming through the audio of the video, but yeah, we're going to have to be really, really careful then through the second half of this race, and especially, you know, if you're doing like 100% races on this game and things like that, it's so immersive, something that I desperately wish the F1 games had, you know, to be able to kind of properly, you know, to feel rewarded for looking after the car and things like that, that you still just don't get on the Formula 1 games, and would definitely take me a little while to learn, it would appear as well. Of course, these cars as well, although you never really kind of used it, they did, I think, allow for kind of automatic upshift as well on the cars. It was something that kind of McLaren pioneered. What's going on here? In the late 90s, and kind of allowed you, you know, obviously you could override it if you wanted to, but kind of allowed you to, you know, just allow the car to cycle up the gears as well then, as we're almost going to be 3 wide down in towards this chicane. That is not where I quite wanted to be. Oh, don't flat spot the tyres even more than I have. And we'll lose a couple of spots there as well. Race control doing their job, and we'll get a warning as well for track limits as well then. You know, wasn't an uncommon sight to see cars going through those kind of escape roads down the chicanes as well in the early 2000s. But, oh, come on, trying to get that power down. Obviously, this was the era of big money, of a lot of engine supplies and things like that. You know, it really does feel like the new regs for 2026 are kind of the first step really back in towards this generation as well of, you know, obviously we've got Honda, you know, teaming up with Aston Martin, Red Bull with Ford as well, Audi obviously coming into the sport. It really does feel like we could capture some of this magic of the early 2000s yet again in the sport, but obviously only time will tell. And I'm sure, you know, it'll still, you know, Formula 1 has always been dominated by just a few teams there, as I'm completely misjudging where the next chicane was on this lap there, as these two putting on a really, really good show actually through the chicane. And let's also quickly give a shout out to Arrows. I'm in the orange car for this one, as you'll probably seen from some of the off-board shots as well, but Arrows, you know, that plucky underdog team that have been around, you know, since the mid-1980s, if I'm not mistaken. The most ever Grand Prix competed in for a team without a win. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, Hockenheim was the last ever event in 2002 that they ever showed up for, of course, before they went bust. Again, we'll try and make it 3 wide. Down in towards that next chicane. Just try and get it slowed down there. A bit of a hop over the curbing. But we'll get away with that as well. And yeah, you know, Arrows, you know, they weren't the biggest team, but they were a plucky underdog that people loved. You know, the same can be said for Minardi and Jordan as well throughout most of their time. Of course, the early 2000s would see the very, very swift downfall of Jordan as well. You know, from that high of 1999 to ultimately, yeah, never really kind of seeing the same success. But Eddie Jordan still remains one of very few men in Formula 1 that has left the sport richer than when he joined, which is a rather impressive feat as well. Whoa! At the end of the day, they're almost doing, I think it was a Jarno Trio. I think it was actually Timo Glock, wasn't it, that binned it at the 2008 Grand Prix here. Dropped it on that outside curve through the exit of the final corner, and that car would just be in a million pieces. And yet another rather expensive Toyota repair job as well. But yeah, obviously that kind of end of an era for a lot of those backmarket teams that have been around for so long, because obviously they just could not compete with all the big money coming in. You know, still some of those teams' DNA lives on within the sport. Obviously Aston Martin now was, you know, Jordan back in the day as well, so, you know, fantastic to see for teams like that as well. But, you know, Red Bull obviously buying out Jaguar, that, you know, really created their own era of dominance since then, as apparently I'm going to do a bit of another hop, skip and a jump. These tyres are so gone, man. I should have disabled tyre wear for this race, because, I mean, that left-hand side wheel, I don't know if you can get punctures in AMS2, but if you can, we cannot be far away from one here. And but it's all those little bits and pieces as well that I think would really add to a career mode on this game, or make it so different than kind of anything we've ever done. Whether I'd run it in chronological order or not, I don't know just yet, but yeah, I'd love to do something with this cycle as well then. As all these two bumping and bashing behind us there, the kind of fake Jaguar and the other Arrows car. Absolutely fantastic battling as we make our way then in towards the final lap of this race. Can I finally get that chicane right? Just about there. But trying to throw the cars through. I mean, these things were so light and so powerful. I think this thing's got 900 brake horsepower from the naturally aspirated V10. You know, these things weighed like less than 600 kilos. They had over 1,500 horsepower per ton, which was just ridiculous. I mean, they're nowhere near that nowadays in the sport. They're kind of running 1,100 horsepower generally. And even then, of course, you know, they don't really run the engines at full chat anymore. You know, back in the early 2000s, they changed it at one point that an engine had to last 2 weekends. And a lot of teams were complaining about that. 2 weekends. Nowadays, you know, there's engine components that have got to last half a season. And yeah, 2 weekends. I remember BAR just could not wrap their head around it and really struggled throughout the early part of that season as well. which is just hilarious. Of course, refueling as well really did make for some different strategies for Grand Prix, but yeah, I need to do a career mode. And whether I just do like a one-off season with this kind of generation to test it, I don't know yet, but I don't know which channel I'll do it on or when I'll do it, but I need to do it at some point as well there. But Automobilista 2, I tell you what, this has been such a fun game to kind of go through and play. You know, really dive into more of it. For all of you guys that have given me more information as well about everything else inside this game, it has been greatly, greatly appreciated, because there is so much nuance in this title. It is so underrated. Like I said, for F1 fans, you know, for the amount of comments I see from people complaining that the official games need to bring back the classic cars, just get this game. £10.50, like I said. I cannot sell it more than I already tried to. Through the final corner, though, we're going to finish P11 in this race here at the Hockenheim ring. Like I said, this series has been so much fun to go through as well there. Get AMS2 if you're on PC. Get the DLC. A load of them are on sale as well at the moment. I'm definitely going to have to come back to this game. I know I will at some point in the not-too-distant future as well. Thank you all so much for watching, though, and we'll be back very soon with more Formula 1 content.